Hey, welcome back to the video. We're going to be looking at an interesting topic today. Something that's been, on our hearts and minds. Something people been thinking about, been stressing about, been talking about. Rings of power. Big rings of power energy today on the channel. Rings of power everywhere. It's going to be coming out soon.
Absolutely.
Real soon.
Yeah.
And we just kind of wanted to talk about some of the things people have been saying about it, some of the conversations that have been happening.
Yeah, and so something I think we should be talking about is kind of why is the Rings of Power hated so much? Because we've seen so much hate for across the internet for this show. And I think Wyatt and I want to kind of summarize and give our own thoughts, add our own voice to the mix as to why is this show, this series, so incredibly hated before it's even released. What do you think? What's your initial thoughts if you were to summarize like a major point of this, Wyatt?
I think it's really going to come back to Tolkien's work. Mm-hmm. Right? For a lot of people, for myself, it's not what Tolkien wrote down. It's not what he had, what he visualized, what he created. It's something new that has kind of, it seems to have been cobbled together, and in this broiling cauldron has been mixed in modern agendas, modern Hollywood and things that isn't in the original works.
The one thing that I would say is, if I was to summarize how people feel about it, if I was to just say, like, kind of what you're saying is that the Tolkien fans are gonna be fans. Like, they're fans for a reason. They're super fans for a reason. We can look at Peter Jackson's work, and I believe Tolkien's son, his name was Clifford or Christopher. He wasn't a fan of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings because he was very picky about his father's work. The thing about the Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's version, why fans love it, even though the son of the author didn't like it, is because we looked at it and we said, this is based on the books. It is literally an account of the books. They have to give us a synopsis for a lot of the work. And at the same time, there's not very large contradictions in there.
Plus,
it's basically a linear story, the same as the books, just with a lot of it not added.
Plus, I mean, I'm going to be talking in reference to Peter Jackson's work about the extended editions.
Okay,
which is probably the most true to the books, right? If you get the whole story of the extended editions, it's not the same as the books. It's different. It's, there's a lot of stuff cut out, but it is the best visual representation of the story, and it's done well, and it's done with a, special passion and regard to the books, and it's done with a love for Tolkien and what he wrote and what he gave people. Yeah. And we haven't seen anything like it, and I don't think we'll see anything like it ever again.
Yeah. And so contrasting that with what's coming with the Rings of Power, why people are so upset, I would say it has to do primarily with they are not simply just removing information, they are adding from what it looks like, an entire new narrative. Now, you might say it's not out yet, which is kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Honestly, what they've revealed to us is so much different than any of the books or stories.
Things like the possibility of Galadriel having a pre-existing relationship with Sauron. Weird. No thanks. Don't want to see that. Also, her existing in the same time and place as other characters that she did in the histories.
Yes.
There's a Queen Regent Maybe
Yes.
she's not queen of Numenor,
Yes.
right? Who is in Numenor, and yet the show is going to make it like, oh, they're, like two best friends taking down evil, right? When they probably never met, or never existed in the same time at the same place as each other. Adding things, the Harfoots being in the story where they shouldn't be. It's more than, oh, they're not hobbits, they're Harfoots. Well, even if they are Harfoots, even if they do eventually become hobbits, or that carries on, they wouldn't be in this place at this time doing these things, interacting with people. Nobody knew about hobbits.
They're making a story, they're building a story around Harfoots that is based loosely on correct accounts towards the I think it's the end of the Second Age, where hobbits first come, or Harfoots or Fallhides or Stoors come into the historical accounts of other races like dwarves, because the dwarves from the Misty Mountains, they would interact with Harfoots specifically, and I think that's what they're playing into here. It's just the timeline's completely off, and another frustration is that ultimately we're going to see a really strong, and I hate to say it, we're going to see a lot of modern politics in these types of stories, like with the Harfoots, where they're not super elaborated on by the writings of Tolkien. So they're going to say, well, we stuck to the book. Like, they do travel over the Misty Mountains and go west. You know what I mean? But it's not in the correct time, the timeline of the accounts. And they're also going to add so much, honestly, BS to the story that is not there, and it's going to revolve around modern day social movements of our world. You know what I mean?
Right, and it's supposed to be a completely different world. It's supposed to be a fantasy world that is based on Old England, because Tolkien was English. It was based on England, which historically was, not a super diverse place to live. And that's not discrediting Tolkien in any way. He was just writing a fantasy based on the history of his people.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be an ancient Europe. That was what Middle Earth was supposed to, it kind of modeled after. To be fair on this point, because a lot of people are bringing it up, and I don't hear this said a lot, if we're going to see diversity, which, to be fair to Tolkien, he gave us options for diversity, and I think they are capitalizing on it with this show to give them some credit, I guess. They chose the Harfoot clan specifically, I believe, because they have an interesting history, but more so, they're actually accounted in the history books as being the more darker skinned of the different clans of hobbits. So if they have, African Americans or people with darker complexions playing Harfoots as kind of a representation thing, it's actually technically correct to give Tolkien, his due.
And the only issue would be that it contradicts what we've seen in the movies, which is clearly all very European. And then to have a show that's so completely different, and yet seems like it wants to harken back to the movies, right? They keep saying that we're this is Tolkien lore and Tolkien things, and yet in multiple different things that people have said in interviews, it's like, we want to take you back to the world of Middle Earth. Which people have already been in Lord of the Rings, and they like, even with the Balrog, Balrog looks
exactly the same
as Peter
Jackson.
And so we're trying to be different from Peter Jackson, but we're also trying to capitalize on nostalgia for Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? I think people is one of the big questions.
There might be some differences, and there's definitely going to be some differences, but also even just with the orcs, there some design choices that are different than Peter Jackson's, but ultimately the style of orcs that we're seeing, it's very strongly based on the Peter Jackson's films of what orcs look like, because he really brought to us a style of orc that's going to be really hard to deter from, but they're utilizing that. And just like with the Balrog and saying, hey, we're going back to Middle Earth, and it's going to be so much different. It's not even close to the Middle Earth that we know.
Right. I mean, why design new orcs when orcs have been so perfectly preserved in the Lord of the Rings movies for now and all time to come? Any fantasy writer, any fantasy director can just kind of copy and paste orcs, have them scary, have them lots of teeth, different skin colors, different, and have them look very similar to Peter Jackson's, but it's just being kind of creatively bankrupt,
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being inspired by the works of others. Peter Jackson did a beautiful job putting the orcs on screen, and they should be an inspiration to other creature designers, right? And to people writing orcs in general, if that helps you envision, a creature in your mind, right? I mean, how many things have we had based off Lord of the Rings in general? Books, movies, everything.
Tons.
Modern fantasy writing is, it's a descendant of Tolkien.
Absolutely.
All of it. I've heard other fantasy writers refer to him as Grandpa Tolkien, right? He kind of is the progenitor of modern fantasy and how we think of it and how we read it, how we film it. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's all great. That's all good. But it seems like Amazon is doing, all of the wrong things, right? They keep saying that they're trying to preserve or
go back to the text.
Go back to the text and make it Tolkien. This is what Tolkien, but it's not. It's not. It's almost like they're re-envisioning is that this is what Tolkien should have written. Does it feel like that to you?
Yeah. Let's summarize really quick before we jump into that. First off, so I would say the main, if we're summarizing here, okay, the main reason is it doesn't feel like we are respecting the works of Tolkien.
Right.
It doesn't. It feels like disrespect to the story. And in some ways, there's an argument to be made that Peter Jackson disrespected the story. So you see how high of a bar that this Middle-earth story has in people's minds. Okay.
Right.
The second thing is we are injecting far too much of today's narratives that we see throughout every single show. You have to have, at least 5 token black characters, whether they're supposed to be there or not. I have no problem with black characters. Literally some of the best actors in the world are black. I mean, I think Denzel Washington.
Killer.
You know what I mean? I think Sam Jackson.
Superstars.
I think Mr. Washington's son, who was on Tenet recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're truly some of the best actors ever. They shouldn't be tokens, all right? And Hollywood is pushing this token mentality. We have the token homosexuals in every single show, and I've heard speculation that they're probably going to make 1 or 2 or a few of the Harfoots gay.
Yeah.
And that's just going to have to be what it is, because
I think
they're legally not allowed to make something without a gay character.
It's not in putting these different kinds of elements into a story or into a narrative isn't bad individually, having a diverse cast of characters and unique things. It's the way that they're going about it is what seems to be rubbing people the wrong way. Like I said, it feels like they're saying this is what Lord of the Rings should have been, right? But it wasn't. It's not what it should have been. Maybe it's what it should be, what it could have been now if he had been writing about it now. That's what it could have been. But when you take something this big, something this beloved, and you say this is how he should have written it, we are making up for past wrongs. That's the wrong way to do a diverse fantasy show.
Yeah,
it feels wrong. It feels like trying to shoehorn things in for the sake of shoehorning them in is disrespectful. And I think that's why a lot of people have a problem with what Amazon is doing. Amazon is a corporation.
Yeah.
They're here to make money.
And Amazon has hired creatives to create a show, a series that's going to make a lot of money. And I have a good feeling that there's going to be a lot of backlash.
I don't know why. I've watched a lot of commentaries about Rings of Power, multiple different viewpoints and people talking about it, and the fans are coming up with better ideas than the people writing the shows.
Yeah,
and it's because the fans love the stories, and the fans want to make good stories about these characters, and the people writing them, I just don't feel like they care.
No, I don't think they care either. Ultimately, I don't think this is going to be a success. I don't. So first off, they don't respect Tolkien's work. They're very disrespectful of it. They're injecting too much of what today's politics, the movements of today's are, and also they're not listening to the fans. They're not listening to the people that are forever going to be the fans of things that are hopefully honoring Tolkien. I mean, we look at they're suppressing information as far as early reviews, so they're definitely paying off people to give good reviews. They're definitely hiding as much as possible anything negative said about the show because they need people to watch it. And also they're not paying attention to individual creators like ourselves online that are saying we don't want this. And if I go back to the diversity issue, when it comes to like the way characters look, I don't think I think Wyatt would agree with this. I don't think we don't think that whitewashing a story makes it a good story.
No, it doesn't make it fun.
This wouldn't be good if everyone in it was white. That's definitely not what we're saying. We are the farthest thing from racist. What we are saying is that when you disrespect and tell a story that's completely different than who wrote it, the person that we respect, and then call it by that person's body of work name, well, that's kind of blasphemy. You know what I mean?
I think maybe we've run into a case here with Tolkien's work and these issues where perhaps modern adaptations for Lord of the Rings aren't possible in our current political climate. And in our current diversity climate.
We got to get our mind right.
Well, I don't know that we can adapt any of what he's written onto film without just making it like an all white cast, right? And maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't put it on screen, right? If we can't be inclusive, or if we're going to be inclusive for the sake of inclusivity, maybe we shouldn't adapt this story. Maybe we should write better stories.
That's interesting.
I know that's saying a lot to write something better than Tolkien. We should write other stories where we can do that.
We should aspire to write better stories. We should be out there practicing, writing, testing material to actually get good. Because there's going to be another Tolkien at some point in history. Why not today?
Right. And as modern writers and as modern creators, we have the opportunity to create stories with diverse cast of characters, and who knows, you write something, it could be adapted into a movie. As modern writers, we can do that. We can write that. We see what's going on nowadays. We can write stories that, feel like they're dealing with issues that we have. I don't know that we need to be going back to Tolkien. It feels like it's just buying a fan base, and trying to, force a new product on people.
Absolutely. And it also doesn't help that they're doing exactly the same thing that Star Wars was doing with Kenobi by saying, if you dislike this, then you're racist. Yeah. They're doing that to fans, people like us.
It's unfortunate.
It's not.
It's really unfortunate that big companies will buy something you love and then tell you you're a bigot or you're racist, tell you, you don't deserve to be a part of the fandom because you don't like what big company corporation is doing.
Absolutely.
It's uncomfortable. It's disingenuous. It does not endear you to this company. It doesn't endear any of us to. It makes us like the writers and creators less. People who are involved makes you like them less. Makes you not want to support what they're doing. And that's not to say like that these actors or anybody necessarily involved isn't good at acting or isn't good at creating something, and so to have something like this be kind of a black spot on the resume is something that you just don't, something that people are going to remember.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I want to give some summary thoughts, and then I'll let you give some summary thoughts and close us out. To wrap it up, we're not respecting Tolkien's work. They're injecting too much of what this world's priorities are at this moment into a traditional story that it does not fit. And they're also disrespecting the fans. And for those reasons, it's going to be hated. It's going to be not supported. It's going to blow my mind if they pick this up for a season 2 after the backlash that's coming, honestly, in a few days. Because whether it's a fun story or not, no one's going to like it because we already know it's not going to be Tolkien's work, and they're calling it Tolkien's work, right?
Right.
So even if it's a fun story, even if it's really well done, it's not going to be Middle Earth, and that's what it's branding on. And so it's not going to be enjoyed. It's not going to be loved. It's going to be hated. And just like Wyatt said, it's unfortunate. The artists in this, I'm sure, are incredible artists. Like, I'm sure visually it's going to be stunning. I think as far as the effects, the lighting, the way it's going to be filmed, I've already seen what they're doing. It looks incredible with composition, with design. It's going to be a beautiful series, and that's where the money's really going to show. And even up to the actors, I don't put a lot of blame on all of the actors. It's just the creators, the writers, the people that are really pushing where this show is actually going, not just artistically, but messaging wise. It's not the right move. And so I don't blame, if you worked on this and you happen to come across this video, I don't disrespect you at all. I appreciate you. But this is not going to be a beloved body of work. It just isn't.
Yeah, my final thoughts, kind of in summary, I was really rooting for the show. I was really hoping that this would be something great, We had Game of Thrones for a solid, I want to say 6 seasons, before it kind of declined. Perhaps the greatest and most well-known show in history. Kind of spoiled towards the end, and people have been kind of scrambling since then. And it seems like we're looking forward to one thing after another and being disappointed over and over again. And I was really kind of hoping that this new Lord of the Rings show would bring back some of that magic, maybe a little bit of Peter Jackson magic, maybe a little bit of Game of Thrones magic, something.
Rip us out of this cycle.
right? You think with the amount of money you can put into something like this, how could you go wrong? And so
Starts in the writer's room.
it starts in the writer's room. It really does. And you know, also with producers and things.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to put in, you know, you can change the story, you can do whatever, but really it comes down to if the fans enjoy it. And if the fans don't enjoy it, it's not going to work.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. We hope that this is insightful. We hope that you thank you for sticking around through all of our thoughts. And as we see this come out, if you enjoy it and you want to support it, it's free country. I don't think after watching probably the first episode, if it's I don't see myself watching the whole thing. I just don't. I'll watch the first episode. That's probably it. So if you really disagree with it, then take a stand. Don't watch it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It may not be public like YouTube, but they know how many people are watching their show. They do. They keep track of that. So if you don't support it, then why would you watch it? Maybe for YouTube content. Maybe so people can do more rants and get more views on YouTube.
Right. There will be definitely a lot of that. Oh yeah.
Thank you guys for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it and like the video. Tell us your thoughts of the upcoming Rings of Power series. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Have a good one.